Ranking Member Durbin, and Senators. My name is William Enyart. I'm a retired Major General. The last 5 years of my service, I was the Adjutant General, that's the Commanding General, for the 13,000 soldiers and airmen of the Illinois National Guard. I had guardsmen in combat in Iraq and Afghanistan 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. We had the largest combat deployment since World War II. I served nearly 36 years in the military. I come from a proud family of veterans. My father, brother, and I served a total of nearly 64 years. We each served as enlisted members. I was commissioned an officer in 1982. After military retirement, I was elected to Congress, where I served on the House Armed Services Committee. I recite these facts so that you understand that I have experience at the enlisted, officer, general officer, and policymaker level. This experience forms the basis of what I will tell you today. I'm here to talk with you about appropriate uses of the National Guard. The National Guard has a proud history of service to our nation, from pre-Revolutionary War days to the World Wars to today's conflicts. The National Guard is the best trained military reserve force in the world. There were times during the Iraq War that the Army National Guard provided more than half of our combat power in Iraq. We train in military skills, not police skills, to provide part-time soldiers for our nation's defense.
The National Guard is not trained to act as police officers. Yes, these men and women wear uniforms, they carry weapons, and they've proven themselves on battlefields in Iraq and Afghanistan, but policing is an entirely different skill set. Guardsmen receive, on average, just a couple of hours of civil disturbance training each year, 2 hours. Think about that for a second. Could anyone realistically expect to learn the complex duties of law enforcement in such a short time? Policing requires months and years of specialized training, from learning how to de-escalate tense situations to understanding laws, conducting investigations, and performing arrests in a safe and controlled way. Soldiers are trained to fight wars, not to handle traffic stops, crime tips, or neighborhood disputes. Now here's where it gets dangerous. When politicians call in the Guard to handle domestic unrest, they're essentially asking trained combat soldiers to step into the role of police without the proper preparation. That's like asking a skilled heart surgeon to suddenly fly a passenger jet. Both are experts, yes, but in entirely different fields. And when you blur those lines, mistakes can happen. Costly mistakes. Potentially tragic mistakes. What happens when a guardsman trained to neutralize enemies in combat faces a civilian protester in a chaotic street situation? Can we really expect the outcome to always be calm and measured? History tells us otherwise.
Our soldiers may receive a couple of hours a year in civil disturbance training. We do not receive the months and years of training required to become qualified police officers. We're not trained to perform arrests, to perform traffic stops, to perform investigations, to follow up on crime tips. The calls to mobilize the Guard fail to understand this, nor do they understand the costs to mobilize the Guard. There's the cost to the taxpayer. The number I've heard for Los Angeles is $120 million for 4,000 guardsmen for 60 days. That's a high price tag for a stopgap measure. How many police officers could have been hired, trained, and put on the streets for $120 million?
And here's where the problem deepens. Every dollar spent on this kind of deployment isn't just a number on a government spreadsheet. It's a dollar taken away from somewhere else. A dollar that could have funded disaster preparedness. A dollar that could have gone into training and equipping soldiers for their real mission, defending the country, not policing it. A dollar that FAMIC can't use when the next hurricane tears through New Orleans or when the next tornado devastates a Midwestern city. The opportunity cost is enormous, and it's one we often don't see until it's too late. But beyond the spreadsheets and budgets, there's a bigger question here. Is it really wise to spend hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars on a stopgap measure? Should we be comfortable with using emergency military resources as a band-aid for deep-rooted policing challenges that require long-term solutions? Because make no mistake, when leaders pull the Guard into these situations, they're not solving the problem. They're kicking the can down the road at a very high cost.
There's the cost to the Department of Defense and to FEMA. Every dollar spent on a misguided use is a dollar that can't be spent on training or equipping these soldiers, that can't be spent on their real mission. A dollar that isn't there for disaster response when the next hurricane hits New Orleans or the next tornado levels St. Louis. And there's the hidden costs to the soldiers and their families. These are part-time soldiers. They have jobs at home. They have educations they are missing. They have families who rely on them, employers who rely on them. Let me speak to you from a guardsman's heart. Sunday, my pastor at the Presbyterian Church in Belleville, Illinois, spoke about trust. He was speaking to the trust between God and man. Let me speak to you of a soldier's trust. A soldier trusts fellow soldiers. They trust their leadership. They trust the political leadership of this country to send them on missions, whether wartime or peacetime, that make sense. Missions
Think back to Kent State in 1970 when guardsmen, caught in a situation they were not trained for, opened fire on student protesters. 4 young lives lost and a scar on America's conscience that took generations to heal. That tragedy didn't happen because the Guard lacked courage or discipline. It happened because they were placed in a role they were never meant to fill. And William Ennert's warning could not be clearer. We are always just one wrong order, one moment of chaos, one pulled trigger away from another disaster like Kent State. But beyond the fear of violence, there's something even more fragile at stake: trust. Soldiers trust their leaders to send them on missions that matter. Families trust that the sacrifices of birthdays missed, jobs put on hold, and time lost are worth it. Communities trust that when they see the National Guard in uniform, it's for protection, for defense, for disaster relief, not to patrol their neighborhoods like an occupying force. When that trust is broken, the consequences ripple far and wide. Once people start to see soldiers as enforcers instead of defenders, the bond between military and community begins to fracture, and rebuilding that takes years, sometimes decades. Now think about this on a personal level. Imagine you're a soldier called away from your family, not to defend the country from an attack or to help after a hurricane, but to police a protest or handle duties meant for trained law enforcement. How long before you, your family, your employer, and your community begin to question whether those sacrifices are being wasted? How long before that sense of honor turns into resentment?
Missions that don't waste their time or lives, that don't waste their sacrifices. A soldier's family trusts that their sacrifices, their loss of that soldier for a day, a week, a month, maybe forever, isn't a waste. Employers trust that Guardsman's mission is necessary, that it's important, that it protects our nation. Communities trust that our soldiers serve our nation, defend justice and democracy. Trust that a soldier's mission is to protect them, not police them. To misuse our troops, whether guard or active duty, is to breach those bonds of trust. When these soldiers are doing what they signed up for, defending our great nation, or helping their neighbors recover from a natural disaster, they don't mind sacrificing wages, missing a child's birthday, losing months away from school. But when they're bagging trash in Washington, D.C., they lose trust. Worse, their employers and families lose trust. It took a generation for the Guard to recover from the stain of Guardsmen shooting and killing college students at Kent State. We're one trigger pull away from another such tragedy. Don't let it happen. National Guard forces are for a real emergency, not a Band-Aid for long-standing problems that need a long-term solution. Thank you.